Good afternoon, everybody. Well, it's not been that long. We saw you last week at Diversity and Inclusion Week, and we're so glad that you're back today to acknowledge Disability Pride Days at EWU. Just so you know, Disability Pride Month is actually in July, but we wanted to make sure that we were doing something during the academic year so that faculty, staff, and students could be a part of it. So we appreciate this. I do want to acknowledge Cindy Nover. Sorry, I know you're eating. Cindy's back here. Give Cindy a round of applause. So 2 years ago, Cindy took a sabbatical and really looked at ways that we could, look at disability as diversity, and we could do a better job on campus. And so Disability Pride Days was an outcome of her great work in this area. And of course, Dr. Ryan Perry up front. Let's give him a round of applause. Our director of Disability Studies. Super excited. We have ASL interpreters here, Jamie and Kathy. So let's give them a round of applause to make sure that we are accessible. We are live streaming and recording today also for accessibility. We're so excited to be here. And Michelle Mowrey, a personal friend of many of us, and her story and her willingness to share is so appreciated. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Stephanie Bradley to do our land acknowledgement.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Bradley, Training and Development Consultant for the Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Whew, going up those stairs. Good. Okay. Eastern Washington University resides within the traditional homelands of the Spokane people and other tribes who are connected through their shared history of this region. This land holds their cultural DNA, and it is their ancestors who are here and bring forth the knowledge of this place, the knowledge that comes from the land. Now, I have the pleasure of bringing up Dr. Ryan Perry, Director of Disability Studies.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I really need to extend Kim's thanks to Cindy and also Stephanie and Kim herself and our interpreters and everyone else who has just worked so hard to make this happen. So for the second year in a row. So could we get one more round of applause? Come on. Thank you. Thank you all. I am pleased to introduce Michelle Mowrey here. I'm going to read her introduction, so bear with me. Michelle Mowrey serves as the Director of Student Engagement and, I'm going to start over. See, these are nerves. Michelle Mowrey serves as the Director of Student Engagement and the Pub at Eastern Washington University, where she supports student involvement, leadership development, and campus events. An Eagle through and through, Michelle earned both her bachelor's and master's degree in English from Eastern. Diagnosed with Tourette's in her late teens, Michelle is passionate about sharing her personal journey to raise awareness and foster understanding around Tourette Syndrome. Outside of work, she loves reading, working out, and spending time with her family. She's also proud to call herself Swoop's biggest fan. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for those of you who are watching online, including mom and sister. It means a lot to be invited to speak for Disability Pride Days. When I was given the option to do this, I had no hesitation. First of all, I love a microphone. So you give me a microphone and I will just talk. So I'm really excited to have you all here. And I see a lot of my people, and that just makes my heart very happy. Okay, we're gonna see if I can figure out how to use a clicker. First, I wanna go over the ground rules for this presentation and things you should know. First of all, I'm hilarious. Just ask my husband. He doesn't always think so, but I am. And so please know it is okay to laugh. And it's okay to be uncomfortable. It is. It's an uncomfortable topic, and I'm awkward and weird, and that's fine. So if you laugh, it's okay. I will allow time for questions at the end, and probably nothing you ask me is gonna hurt my feelings. So if you have a question, I'm happy to answer, but pro tip, don't ask me something you actually don't wanna know the answer to, because I will be honest. I am not a doctor. I'm gonna be speaking from my personal perspective and my lived experience. So, speaking of that, I have to tell you that 2 weeks ago, I would not have imagined that this presentation could be political in any way. I take my sense of representing the institution very seriously. And at the same time, I have to be aware that I have my own lived experience, and I am Michelle with a personal life, and sometimes I need to be representing me and not the institution. So please just give me the grace to do both. Thank you. Given the times that we live in right now, it would be disingenuous at best to not address some of the statements that have been made by our Secretary of Health and Human Services, and this being Disability Pride Week. We all know that the people for whom we are representing for this week have a variety of challenges. Everyone has challenges, but we are here to support and talk about those people. So I'm gonna put a couple of quotes up. I am not going to read them. First of all, my presentation is not about autism. But when I saw this quote online, I then had to go listen to the quote. Did this happen? I think the nicest thing I can say is that I was deeply upset. And I do not feel that the overgeneralization that this quote states is helpful at best. So we'll go with that. Last week, this popped up. He spoke about how, first of all, he called some of these things injuries that he'd never heard about when he was a kid. What I'd like to point out, Tourette specifically was first written about in 1885. These things primarily are not considered injuries. And the only other thing I'd like to address in this quote is that the 50s and 60s compared to 2025, we have very different access to information. So I think it is fair to say that what we know and can see now is different. All right, moving on. About me. You already heard a little bit about me, but I have a mic, so I'm gonna share. I grew up in the Tri-Cities, Washington. I am an Eastern alum. And I spent many years working in housing and residential life, got my peeps, and I now oversee student engagement and the pub, which is awesome. I am a huge fan of Swoop. He was the ring bearer in my wedding. That was a surprise from my husband. All right, so you're not actually here to talk about me, just the human. Let's talk about Tourette's. So I have done a version of this presentation 2 other times for Disability Equity and Inclusion Week at Eastern, and I wanted to change things up a little bit. When I did the presentation previously, I had shown a clip from the movie Deuce Bigalow. Many of you remember seeing Amy Poehler. There's a whole lot of cussing. I thought I've grown. And so I think there's different ways to address and explain what people think Tourette's is. So just to cover the popular, what we see of Tourette's, it's screaming, swear words, extreme tics. This is my primary tic. Can't get away from it. Sometimes it's a little hip thing. Looks like I'm dancing. It's severely negatively impacting relationships and quality of life and leading to social isolation. So ultimately, we are seeing only things that are negative and extreme. You might see a little bit more positive things on Instagram because there is a community on there, but we only think of it as negative. Therefore, we think of the people who have it negatively. All right, but what is Tourette's actually? So according to the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, I'm pretty sure I got that wrong. Anyway, in order to be diagnosed with Tourette's, you have to have 2 or more motor tics and at least 1 vocal tic. I'll talk a little bit about when I went to see the doctor. I have never been fully aware of my vocal tic, but he saw something, he said, you have Tourette's. So it could be there, I'm sure. You have to have had tics for at least a year. They have to have begun before the age of 18, and you have to have symptoms that are not due to taking medication or other medical conditions. Fun fact, the medication I do take, tics is a side effect. That's weird. The other thing to think about is that Tourette's can often have co-occurring conditions. Now, what I like about this iceberg on the right, this presentation is all of the memes. That's how I chose to try and entertain you. A lot of people who have Tourette's also have ADHD or ADD or OCD, anxiety, a number of other things. So they don't have to, but they often co-occur and happen at the same time. Okay, what is a tic? Tics are unplanned movements. Sounds, rapid, recurrent, non-rhythmic, that sort of situation. The key word being unplanned, right? I'm not up here thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this now. It is just happening. If I want to try and stop it, I can for a hot minute. Usually it will come back in full force. There's a difference between motor tics and vocal tics. So they consider simple motor tics, blinking, head jerking, shrugging. Complex motor tics, which is more what this is, it involves multiple muscle groups, right? Vocal tics, they're sniffing, grunting, throat clearing. Those are things that you may or may not even notice that someone has. The ones we know more about, we see online, we see in movies, is repeating words or phrases. And then there's the also famous coprolalia, which is the screaming obscenities or saying obscenities and phrases. Something that I think is interesting when I have done my research is that there are some experts that actually debate whether vocal tics are actually motor tics and if it's even necessary to separate those. And the reason for that is everything is motor. You have to use muscles to create it. So, I mean, that tracks, but we often hear about vocal tics more than we hear about the motor tics. Okay, so my primary tics, like I said, shoulder, I got a little hip thing. My chair, and work chair, anything inevitably starts to wobble because I just move around a lot. Something that is fairly new I've noticed in the last year is with my mouse while I'm I start kind of slapping it a little bit, like I'm bouncing a ball. It's awkward. I don't love it, but it happens. And I dress differently and specifically because of my Tourette's. So you will almost never see me in a suit jacket. They're tight, they're confining. I like to be sleeveless. I never have to worry about ripping my clothes that way. I usually wear looser clothes so I don't have to worry about what that jerking does. Lucky for me, I work in an institution where no one has ever told me that I have to dress a very specific way. I'm prepared if I had to, though. I got you, Josh. No, he doesn't. But if you see tank tops, yes, it's because I am physically hot, or I meant hot temperature-wise. You can take it however you want. But also, and primarily, so that I don't rip my clothes. All right. Okay, so before I knew I had Tourette's, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 1980. And what did we hear in the 1980s? Sit still. Sit down, sit still. For the love of God, sit still. And I can't sit still. At this point, I don't even try. I'll stand up. So I was always known as the fidgety kid. And when I think about it, there were probably 3 or 4 people in my classes going through middle school and elementary school who would move around a lot. Based on what I know about things like ADD, ADHD, I can kind of pinpoint some people who I think maybe had some of those, would have been diagnosed with those later. I would have kids that sat next to me in elementary school who didn't want the teacher's attention, and they'd be like, hey, I got you. Hey, stop, she's looking over here. But not in a bad way, nothing that would hurt my feelings, but I knew that there was gonna be a report card, just as I would get talks too much in class, needs to sit still. There we go. From very early on, my mom would always ask the doctors. She had this sense that there was something wrong with me. And so, from when I can remember, to ask my doctor, I think my daughter has Tourette's. And they would be like, no, she doesn't, she's fine. Well, she doesn't sit still, she's always moving around. And they were like, yeah, well, she's a kid. So in the 80s, they knew the kids didn't want to sit still, but they were gonna tell you, sit still. When I was in high school, I distinctly remember in a health and fitness class, most of the kids in my school didn't really make a lot of comments. I was not on the radar. I was not the popular one. I just kind of existed. And at some point, I must have started to make my tick, you can sort of, if you think about it, you can sort of kind of try and change it to be something that's a little more socially acceptable. It takes a long time to do. But this girl in class who sat behind me, she must have thought I needed something help with my bra strap. So she would come up every day and she'd be like, okay, I'm gonna tighten your bra strap a little bit. And that didn't help. I mean, it didn't hurt, but I was like, okay, you do you. I can't imagine that happening now. But I can see how it does look like maybe I'm just trying to fix stuff, right? After I did Running Start, I graduated high school, finished my AA at Columbia Basin College, and I started working at Hanford with people who were primarily my parents' age. And so I think I was like 18, early 19. And one of my coworkers at Hanford would just stop and she'd be like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, so many things. But I was like, but what specifically is the issue? And she's like, what is this about? It's irritating. And I thought about that a lot. And she's like, you should really see a doctor. There is something wrong. And so I did decide to go see a doctor. That was maybe not the nicest way to say it, though. All right. Okay, so I go to the doctor. I feel like this right now. It's fine. Okay, things to know. You go see a neurologist. There's no specific test for Tourette's. It's all based on observation. So I went in prepared. I had my list of questions. Doctor, my mom says I have Tourette's. I'm irritating the people at work. What do you need to know? I can bring home videos of when I would play basketball, and you can see me like elementary Michelle playing basketball, running down the court like this. And the doctor just watches me, he asks some questions. And he's like, yeah, I don't need to see the video. Darling, you've got Tourette's. Okay, that's fine. That's good to know, I guess. But when I go home, I'm very excited to tell my mom, who, by the way, is a wonderful human being. Both my parents are wonderful human beings. And my mom's reaction was like, okay, Mom, sit down. I went to the doctor, and she's like, yeah, I have Tourette's. And she danced. She was like, yes, I knew it. Which I don't know what I was expecting, but it tracks. I think that my mom could tell there was something different. And I don't think she really thought wrong. There was something wrong with me. It was just different. You look at my sister, this is not the same. She does not do these things. And so at this point, I have a name for what this is. It's no longer Michelle is just fidgety. I have Tourette's. But I was fundamentally no different before I had this label. I just had a name for it. But other people were different after I had the label. So I can specifically remember one of my family members who at that point was like, okay, so Michelle's got Tourette's. My sister Lindsay. Lindsay obviously has Tourette's. Nah, bro, she does not. And then when it was like, well, that's debunked, maybe my nephew, my sister's son, Gavin, he has Tourette's. No, he's just a rambunctious little boy. He moves around a lot. This is not the same. And so again, this is where things, if you see what you think are tics, it has to last for over a year. And one of the questions that I do get asked is, why is that? Well, I'm not a doctor, but my guess is that a habit is hard to last for over a year, right? I think I don't know for sure, but that tracks, right? So I'm the only one in my family that I'm aware of that has Tourette's. Okay, I'm gonna talk about other people's reactions. So first, I have to say that how I react to other people, or how other people react is how I react to other people's reactions is far more important to me than what their reaction is. Because I can't control them, I can only control me. And how I react depends on a variety of things. My mood, my level of comfort, if I think I might see someone again, that makes a difference. And like I said, I'm prepared for all the questions, right? So if you ask me something, I'm going to react super wonderful today. But if in some of the situations I'm going to share with you, I was maybe less positive than I could have been. We'll go with that. So one of the things that I always do, if I'm sitting anywhere in public, and God, especially on a plane, is I'm very aware of where I'm sitting. If I'm gonna sit in the chairs up here, I'm scooting them over. I want someone, my poor friends, I will always sit next to one of you, because then I can hit you and not someone I don't know. Because I know you love me, and you have accepted this. I had a plane flight where I knew I was gonna be flying from Boston for like some 6-hour flight. And so I took Advil PM, and I was like, I'm gonna sleep through this. And I fall asleep, and then I wake up an hour later, and we are still on the tarmac. And that was unfortunate. So they kick us off the plane, and we have to get on a different plane. And now, the only seat I can get is a middle seat. Now, nobody wants a middle seat. Nobody. But especially I don't want a middle seat. And furthermore, the people on either side of me don't want me to have a middle seat. But I really wanted to get home, so I took it. And in that situation, I had, we're gonna call this maybe 2008-ish, right? That matters because the lady to the left of me had a portable DVD player, so every single time I looked at her, she acted as if I was stealing her movie. And the person to the right did not want me to move, exist, or get up to go to the bathroom on a 6-hour flight. but I could not go back to sleep because I apparently had slept hard when I was on the plane before. And so for the entire time, I sat like this. That's not really tenable in a 6-hour flight. My husband takes the middle seat for me always, and if given a choice, I will always choose an aisle seat. So I hit the wall, the flight attendant, who I can usually stop, or the cart, that hurts. And I will always pay a little bit more to pick the seat. Now, something I've done, I've only flown Southwest a few times, and the first few times, I did not ask for any sort of accommodations. But what I have decided is that I will, when I fly, I'll be flying Southwest next time I fly, I will be going up and asking if I can sit first. And I've decided, because I haven't felt like I've needed a lot of accommodations in my life, but this is really about other people, probably more than it is about me, so I can get a seat where I'm not gonna physically harm other people. Okay, most people, when they see me having my Tourette's or tic attacks, they don't say anything. But I do have some fun stories and some not so fun stories. I was in a training, and I had my friend in a class with me, and she was walking in. I waved at her, and she sits next to me. And the instructor was watching us, and then when he started talking and doing the class, I did this, and he thought I was waving at him. And I was like, no. And he's like, well, what's going on? Because at that point, he is gonna call it out. Like, he thinks I'm trying to engage with him, but I am not trying to engage with him. So I'm like, I'll just be the most simple I can be. I have Tourette's. And his face turned pale. He's like, oh, you could tell he wished he had not asked. I wished he had not asked. There's a very specific point at a store. I had very dry skin. I had to get steroid cream or something. And I was in a very emotional state. So this is where I say, depending on my mood, how I react can matter. So I, at this point, find out that my insurance wasn't going to work. I'm looking at cortisone cream or something in the aisle, and I'm doing this. And some person walked up and was like, hey, tweaker, at which point I just started crying. Now, that is not a very Michelle sort of thing to do. So tweaker, that's one. So in that moment, it appears that I looked like I was on drugs. And if I think about it, if you don't know me, and I was probably in sweatpants, or I don't know, not that that matters, but I probably did look off, okay? But what this has made me think about since that comment is I am very aware that in the very few times I've been pulled over by police, I get a little nervous. Now let's say something. I have privilege with my white skin. I get nervous if an officer pulls me over, that they might think I'm trying to pull something or do something. But in a way, my skin color, I think, has definitely made that, and my gender, I'm sure, has made it so that I don't appear to be a threat in a way. But it is something I think about. One of the things that I have had many people try to do, many people, probably over 20, is try to hold my arm down. Yeah, no, don't touch someone. It's not helpful. Now, if my husband wants to lightly massage, that might be nice. Go ahead, massage my arm. But when you're trying to hold someone's arm down or prevent the tic, what that does, I can just speak for me, is I am already stressed because I know that you are noticing, and then you're going to try and stop it. And that doesn't make it better, and maybe they can stop for a hot minute, but then again, it just goes right back. So, not great. Okay, one of my favorite stories, and it's one of my favorite stories now. It was not one of my favorite stories at the time. Has anyone heard of Body Pump? It's a workout class. Okay, Melanie, yes. So Body Pump is a Les Mills workout program where it's like you do certain tracks for every song. This isn't really applicable, but you have a bar and you can adjust the weights. Okay, so when I go to an exercise class, primarily I'm going to go to the back. I don't want to be in the way. I really don't want to be up close to the mirror anyway. But I had come late, which is not very Michelle thing to do. And I get there and the only spot is like halfway in the middle of the class. And at the end of the class, the lady who was behind me came up and she told me that I was very distracting and I needed to be behind everyone. And I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't want that. I came in late, I'm sorry. And I said, well, in case you're wondering, I have Tourette's, and so this is a tic, and that's a thing. And she's like, well, are you gonna throw the weights? Well, I haven't. And if I think about it, like, maybe if it was a small weight, like a dumbbell, I mean, maybe I guess I could. I haven't. I work out with dumbbells all the time. Never have I thrown one. But a bar, absolutely not. And so I went home, and I think before I even left the parking lot, I had texted my friends. And Deb Stafford, one of my best friends, had started coming up with a plan for the next week to rally around and have people come up and be a circle around me. And it's like, thank you, but unnecessary. It's good to have people. But I came back next week, and I went to the back. I made sure I was early. And the lady came up, and all she said was, I looked up Tourette's. I'm sorry. And she walked away. Which, you know what, I'll take it. Like, if you don't know what you don't know, right? Oh, the bus. Okay, the bus, for those of you who are students, the bus now, not the same. Like, it used to be like standing room only. You can actually sit now. It's great in ways. This one specific instance, I was sitting on the bus, I'm twitching, and this guy just looks at me and he says, what is wrong with you? And I was in a mood. I was like, I have Tourette's. He's like, well, do you have kids? I was like, no, I don't have kids. He's like, good, you wouldn't want to pass that along. And then I chose to not fight and I let it go, but I clearly didn't let it go because I'm talking to you about it here. Right? I called my parents and told them. My dad was like, well, I hope he doesn't have kids because he's rude. Okay. I'd like to acknowledge everyone has challenges, right? Like, people with Tourette's have challenges, people without Tourette's has challenges. Here are just a few of mine. All right, so makeup. I did a full face of makeup today. You're welcome. I don't normally do that. I only stabbed myself in the eye twice doing the mascara. That's why I don't normally do that. It is a pain. Interviewing. Interviewing is difficult for everyone at best, right? Like, people are nervous. You want to put your best foot forward. There's people who think like, well, if you have a disability, you should tell people, but you're only going to get chosen because you have a disability or whatever. I've not found that to be the case for me. I think, if anything, you're hiring me in spite of my obnoxious attitude, but also fun. And you're hiring someone because they're good at what they do. I went to the placement exchange. And what that is you're in a convention center that's probably 4 times the size of this room. And there's all of these tables, 6-foot tables, and people are interviewing. And I was wearing a suit jacket, because that's what you have to do. I did rip it. What I was told by a friend of mine is that I should put out the objection. So just tell people immediately, like, hey, just so you know, I have Tourette's, this is what this is. And the very first university I interviewed with was Arizona State University. And 8 in the morning, hi, I'm Michelle, I have Tourette's, that's what this is about. Thank you for meeting with me, let's do this. And the looks on their faces were horrified. So based on that, I did not do that again. That was not a choice I made again. However, they did hire me. It was like the one little blip in between my times at Eastern. I really love this meme. It makes me so happy. Oh, nope, too far, Michelle. Okay, not clicking through. Okay, talking about dating. So one of the things that someone who loves me said when I said I was going to be dating, I came to Eastern and I was single for a good long time. And what someone said was, I want you to be thoughtful about how you talk about the Tourette's, because I'm just afraid that no one will love you. Now, that sounds very harsh. It's not my favorite statement. I think it was meant in love. What occurred to me when I started trying the dating, I did the dating online, I'm saying the dating because it's the worst, is I, for the most part, didn't say anything to anybody until I was on the date. And depending on how they would ask me, I knew whether I was interested in seeing this person again or not, right? So one person asked and was like, oh, and then immediately shut down. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Another person asked, what's with the thing? And I just was like, nah, I'm a little twitchy. And the point in which I respond, I'm just a little twitchy, that might be fine for someone I'm gonna meet once in a store. But I knew it wasn't gonna go anywhere. I met this dude, my husband now. I met him and I ended up texting him about it in advance. And he started off with the normal question, so does that mean you cuss a lot? And I'm like, well, yes, but not because of the Tourette's. And it's like, bubbles, go away, bubbles, go away. Researching, looking up questions, and, well, 13, 14 years later, some numbers of years later, we are married. Yes, he's my hero. My husband, Ryan, he is the one who will walk around and make sure that I don't have to think about where I'm gonna sit. He's gonna sit in the place that's awkward for me, and I love him for that. Dating's still the worst. Never doing that again. Nope, still not clicking. Okay, sorry. Presenting. Okay, so clearly I can present. I love a microphone. I know I've said that before. But one of the things is my preferred type of presenting is where I can move around. Because like I said, I don't stay still. But I don't generally get nervous. Like I was a little bit nervous, and then I saw my people, and now I'm not nervous anymore. But I do get nervous presenting in front of people who I would consider important, especially if they don't know that I have Tourette's. Because what I think I have internalized and are trying to work around is that this is not something that prevents me from being good at my job or being able to communicate information. It just may be, like the lady in the class said, distracting. And it might be distracting from my message. So I always prefer if people know, but it's not like I'm like gonna go up and tell all the vice presidents, for example, hey, I have Tourette's, so just ignore the twitchiness. That's weird too. All right, and then LASIK. Okay, so I had LASIK. It lasted a good 10 years, so I'm rocking the glasses. The aging makes things happen. But Ryan had mentioned that I should get LASIK, and I'm like, under no circumstances. Why would I do that? You have to sit still. And then he said something that made sense, which is you can sit still long enough for the dentist to do things, right? And I'm like, yes. Okay. So I did get LASIK, and they gave me a Valium. First of all, I don't do the drugs. Real bad for Michelle. But I did get very loopy, and they gave me a big teddy bear to hold, like this, and just for 1 minute at a time. I held still, and I got the LASIK, and then when I woke up, Ryan was very concerned that I wouldn't like him because I could actually see his face. His words, not mine. I was like, I can see your face, because it's so great. So I did do that. I was able to. All right, so I've complained a lot. I've said some negative stories. So let's get a little happier. Okay, I can't change me. And if I didn't have Tourette's, I wouldn't be me. And I can have bad days. It doesn't mean that accepting myself means that things aren't hard and irritating sometimes. But I have come to a place where I really love this middle quote. At some point, it stops being about getting others to accept us, and it's more about accepting ourselves. And this is something that I think is applicable for my presentation and all of Disability Pride Days. When you are seeing someone you love and there is a disability of whatever sort, a challenge of any type, and for students or just anyone here who may have a disability, it's all about learning to accept ourselves. And that is something that maybe takes time to do. But it's important. All right, everyone has their own path, and there are some tips that I want to focus on of what makes me think that I am able to thrive with Tourette's. And I'm not thriving every day, like I said. There are still hard days. I took my daughter to a hockey game, and a little boy walked up, this is the worst moment of my life. I know, second to worst moment of my life. This little boy was right here, and I had no idea, and I just rocked him. And so there's still bad days. He's okay. I texted my friends. It was embarrassing. Okay, number 1, own who you are. I can't be anything but Michelle. I'm fun, I'm hilarious, I'm good at my job. So remind yourself what you're good at. I'm a good writer. When I was in high school, people would pay me to write letters to the editor. It was sort of a challenge for me. I want to write a letter to the editor, to the Tri-City Herald, for however many people read them, even about things I didn't agree with. It was just what I was going to do. Having Tourette's, there's not a lot of positive things we see about Tourette's, right? I don't think I would be as confident as I am. I have to know that I am good at what I do to be able to get past the idea that I am this little weirdo and that there's things that are different and distracting for other people. Find your people. So the best way to do that, be you, be unapologetically you, and you will find them. People, if you're my people, please raise your hand. These are my people. They're all here. It's great. And then if I have to sit next to them, Sonora, no, it's fine. Tanner, you're my people. All right. Given this specific situation, my recommendation, if you have a disability that can be considered disruptive, like my Tourette's, talk to people at work. It's not a secret. People are going to notice. Just say it. Let them ask questions. And if you need help, ask for it. That could be a doctor, a counselor. You don't have to suffer alone. Find your community. And if you don't know where that community is, start online. The Tourette's Association of America has a phenomenal website, and they have amazing Instagram posts, and I've gotten to know several people on there, and I know that my brand of Tourette's is not as extreme as some, and it is easier. I can't pretend that it's not. But find your people, and then take care of you. And what that looks like for me is I need to exercise on a regular basis. If I don't, my muscles know, my brain, I get stressed, and it just comes out more. I also get massages because the pain in my shoulder is pretty rough. And I am concerned that one day I might need a shoulder surgery, and I don't even know how you're supposed to do that. If you have to hold your shoulder still, I just don't know. Okay. So, to the man, on the bus. I have 2 children now. I have one stepdaughter, Ari, who's 19, and I have this 7-year-old little mini-me in the photo named Willow. She is a Spitfire. Things to know about Tourette's. Tourette's can be passed on to children. It generally shows up between 5 and 12. The average age where it can be diagnosed is around 6. I mentioned the co-occurring conditions. Those are things that doctors would want to know if you want to talk to them. And my one thing I would say is if you have kids, let them move. Telling them to hold still, it doesn't help anything. Now, if I think about it, I tell my kid to sit when we're at the dinner table all the time, and I mean that. She doesn't have to sit still, just get your butt on the seat. She disagrees vehemently. And one of the things that I looked up previously when I found out I was pregnant and when I was preparing for this presentation is, what are the tips for people who have Tourette's to be parents? And there's nothing, which, if I think about it, is maybe because, well, we all grew up and we dealt with parents who didn't know what the hell they were doing. No offense to them, they just didn't, right? And so maybe I should know, but I thought there might be some thoughts. No. Kids say the darndest things in the best of circumstances. Willow, when I was putting her to bed one time when I was 3, she told me to stop moving. Stop moving, Mama, you're a monster. You are moving too much. Now, when she says something very occasionally, my husband gets very upset. Not in like a bad way, but like he needs to defend me. And I generally try to take it as the best I can. Like, well, what does she know? She's 7, right? And I try to make everything a learning moment. And it's not always the time to make things a learning moment, but I try. Another time, she told me I was not allowed to put her to bed until I could stop moving my arm. You have to sit still. To which I said, well, you're going to have Dad putting you to bed for a whole long time. Something that I've thought a lot about is that the people in my life, and particularly my kids, they probably have to be, and you, my husband, he has to be aware that he probably has to explain this, or doesn't have to, but he will explain this before people come into our lives. And I thought about this because when Ari first brought a boyfriend over, I think she told him in advance, my stepmom has Tourette's, she's gonna move a lot, don't say anything. And I thought it's gotta be kind of hard to be like, this is a thing I need to bring up. But also, she probably had to be thoughtful about like, well, what is Michelle gonna say? Because that's a real thing. Like, how is Michelle gonna react if someone asks that question? So that's just something I am thoughtful about. One of the things that Ryan wanted me to mention is when Willow was a baby, when I would hold her, I would not tick very much. And I hadn't really noticed it. But he and my mom, like, they would watch, they would confirm, and then I'd put the baby down, and then my arm would just start to go. And I think that was interesting. I think it was about the first 9 months or so where that happened. And then I think the last thing I'll say about parenting at this point is when I watch Willow, I'm trying not to watch too closely. She's a kid. If I notice something, just like I would for any other thing at the doctor, I'll make a note. But I think when we know that there's things one might want to look for, it's easy to pinpoint and get that bias, to have that in your mind and look for things to validate that. Right now, she seems totally normal, if not completely overconfident, or fully confident, as I am glad she is. She is doing the confidence. That is her quote. I wanted to end my presentation with some positive quotes. Positive quotes the way I see them. I want to see a feisty group of disabled people around the world. If you don't respect yourself and you don't demand what you believe in for yourself, you're not going to get it. I wish for a world that views disability but as unique attributes that can be mental or physical, not a hindrance, seen as powerful assets if given the right opportunities. And the ADA was a wonderful achievement, but it was only the tip of the iceberg. You can pass a law, but until you can change society's attitudes, that law won't mean much. So if I can leave you with 3 things. Respect yourself. Know that we all see and have to do things differently. Everyone has something to offer. That was one long one. And we're not there yet. I don't know that we'll be there, but it's all baby steps. And I think step 1 today is you all came here, and I thank you for that. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so if you remember, if anybody has questions, we want to use a mic to make sure that we are being accessible. So who wants to ask something? Oh, sorry.
There you go. I don't have an outside voice. Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been wonderful. I have been curious as to whether, are there any situations or circumstances that actually cause your tic to be more prominent as compared to circumstances that might help it be less prominent?
Yeah, great question. When I am stressed or lack of sleep, those are some primary indicators. So the more stressed I am, the more it goes. I have a much harder time controlling it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, did you have
Okay. Ryan, I'm coming with the mic, okay? Was it Ryan? Yeah. There you go.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Can you just say more? I heard a lot about internalized ableism. Can you say more about maybe, I have parenting. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and she just asked about us and normal parents. So what do you do? How do you, if you're willing to speak to it, how do you do disability pride at home amongst yourselves?
That is a great question. I don't have all the answers. With Willow specifically, I try to turn everything into a learning moment, much to the detriment and causing actual no learning when she's not ready for it. So I think the way I have approached it is that everyone is normal because everyone is different. Every one of us is unique. So whether that is my husband is half Filipino, so we're in a mixed race family. Willow's very white presenting. I'm white, and we are different from other people. So I think I start conversations based on what she mentions, whether that's in terms of race or other things. She has asked me about why we give money to some people on the side of the street, but not others. And I'm like, well, it's usually on whether we have any. People don't carry cash. But I'm trying to let her drive some of those conversations. But I do have a lot of conversations around our families that representation of all kinds matters. And that is the hill I die on, much to the detriment of some people with which I have been a part of the conversations. Representation matters, and it matters for people to see, and it matters for my children to see. So that's kind of how I do it. If you find out some more, please share. Yeah.
Okay, we have time for one more question. Okay. Oh, look who's asking.
Oh, no.
I know, I'm super curious. There you go.
Okay, so the last time we flew together, they asked, you mentioned something to someone on the flight, and they moved you to a different row.
Yes, they did.
I need to know, did you ask them to do that before so that I had to be with the grumpy 6-year-old at the time? I'm putting you on the spot now. I don't normally ask you it. Do you slide them some money for that?
Ground rules, honesty. No, I didn't. No, this is actually something that I think is a great thing to ask, especially in regards to Disability Pride Days, right? So in this situation, there was lots of seats, like little pockets of seats that were open, and this man was sitting over in another aisle, and I said to the lady, the flight attendant, "Oh, I have Tourette's," and she did not ask. She just said, "Okay, I need you to come with me," and she moved me to the other seat, so that, because it was two-seaters, so that I didn't have to sit next to this man, and probably so he didn't have to sit next to me. The kid had a whole meltdown, to which, if you remember, I said, "Do you want me to come back?" But what I would say is, one of the things that I remember Kevin Hills, the former director of Disability Support Services, say is you should not assume that someone wants your help. So I have taken this to heart. If I see someone who's in a wheelchair coming up, I don't press the button for them. I don't ask if they want me to hold the door. I used to. And I do that specifically because he said that. If they want the help, they will ask for it, because otherwise you are assuming that they cannot do it for themselves. So in this situation, no, I did not. In our next flight, I will be telling Southwest so that I don't have to do that. All right.
Okay.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, let's give Michelle a big round of applause. Thank you so much.